it's a Buddhist game. But pay attention to the world. Observe other people and their interactions. Observe inanimate things. Observe the most foreign thing you come across in your day, on your journey, and say to yourself, I am that too. All the boundaries are illusions. I am that. The banana slug, I'm that. The street person getting up after a hard night, I am that person. The buds on the roses preparing for summer, I am that. Walk and look and say it over and over and over with your full attention. Imagine that you are not material stuff at all. You have no real boundaries. Who you are is infinite and eternal, light and dark, beautiful and not so beautiful. Though in the right slant of light, so much is beautiful. Everything is merely events, interacting in creative ways. Nothing is always the same. Subatomic particles change behavior when we look at them. Did you read that? What doesn't have consciousness? Who could know such a thing? What is not alive? Perhaps rocks are not self-reflective. I mean, how would I know? But maybe there's a kind of aliveness. Our Dr. Charles Hartshorne was an ornithologist, a man who loved and studied birds. Always a profound observer of the world, he shifted from strictly scientific look into philosophy, trained by the scientific method to see carefully, to compare and contrast, to be oh so careful, and to measure and to eliminate mere speculation as far as possible. He was struck by the observation and finally came to believe that his beloved birds sing, sometimes at least, because they have emotions. He believed that birds sing at least sometimes because they love to sing. Within the world of science, this is a pretty remarkable thing to say. If you believe that birds sing because they want to sing, not merely because they're attracting a mate or calling others to safety or trying to find food, our model of how things are changes. Our model of the universe has changed a lot of times, you know. From Aristotle until the Middle Ages, people thought of the earth as an impure land existing under heaven, where everything was pure and timeless and everlasting. Everything existed for the benefit of human beings, including everything on earth. Now we are saying that it's possible there's no hierarchy at all, that nothing exists just for the benefit of anything else. We are all mixed up in an astonishing soup of life. From a UU World article by Reverend Gary Kowalski, a 2003 article on Hartshorne. In his autobiography, The Darkness and the Light, the philosopher Charles Hartshorne relates an early religious experience that took place when he was a soldier stationed in France during the First World War. On a small ledge located a few feet under the edge of a great chalk cliff that faced the English Channel, the young man liked to sit and think, not daydreaming about wine, women, and song, or even thinking about battle or all of the other preoccupations of military men, but rather he was reading William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience, thinking about the nature of ultimate reality. Perhaps James, who once defined religion as what one does with one's solitude, was right in this instance, for it was in this isolated place, with only the wheeling gulls for company, that the future theologian had two experiences that would shape all the rest of his career, and I add his life. I'd been thinking of certain aspects of my life that seemed discouraging, remembers Hartshorn. These somewhat gloomy reflections were interrupted by a simultaneous multitude of shrill sounds. Looking almost vertically down to the bottom of the cliff, he saw a schoolyard playground filled with laughing French children. The contrast startled him. Suppose, he thought, my own life is unsatisfactory. So what? I'm a tiny fragment of human life, and the rest of it is not all unfortunate or wretched. Nothing compels me to think of myself as miserable rather than like those others, those children, as happy. This is the important part. Never since then, writes Hartshorn, have I allowed myself to identify, less briefly, with the question, is life good and beautiful? With the question, is my life good and beautiful? And I have not wavered from that there is some minimal good and beauty in all life, including my own, and what finally matters, even to me, is the whole. The something that includes me and outlasts me, save as I contribute myself to it, and contains more good than I can imagine. Hartshorn's other religious experience happened as he was looking across and up the valley at the wide scenic landscape. He says he'd been thinking about these great questions of mind and matter and pondering the dualistic hypothesis that we started with, that there are two kinds of reality, an outer world, which is governed by blind and unthinking forces, and the inner world of thought. But he was looking at the rolling terrain and its vibrant greens and earth tones, its serenity and calm, and he realized he no longer believed that. He realized, he said, that the landscape, this is hard for me to jump over, but he believed the landscape he beheld was itself endowed with feelings, was sensitive, as restless and filled with nameless stirrings as he was himself. Now, if you're still paying attention at this point, you may be shocked to think that Hartshorn believed that the landscape had feelings. The landscape was alive. Of course, we all see problems in drawing the line between what has feelings and what doesn't, right? Even among animals, where do we say that feelings no longer exist or no longer matter? Only humans? Humans and our dogs? What about sea urchins and microbes? My experience has been that if I am really attentive, the line of separation moves further and further away. I haven't yet found an absolute line, and I'm willing to say it doesn't exist. But a landscape? Surely a landscape has nothing like sentience about it. And yet, there was an evening when I was camping alone by a river in the shadow of a very large mountain. I was sitting there, being with the mountain and the growing dark, and two lines of poetry kept running through my head. One was from Wendell Berry. He goes dark into the life of the hill. I felt something true in that. He goes dark into the life of the hill. I was both peaceful and awed and connected in a way that was very unusual. At least I'm not usually aware of it. She goes dark into the life of the hill. It felt right. The second line was from Chinese poet Li Po. We sit together, the mountain and I, until only the mountain remains. Well, by golly, I too have had something of that experience of the life of the mountain and my connection with it. Most of us, I hope, have had such experiences of being small but connected to something grand and radiant. Today, I would say that I hope such experiences offer us glimpses of the process of which we are a part. And while that moment may fade, somewhere inside, we are changed. What else might be said about the God of process? Hartshorne himself wrote 30 books about it. It's hard to single out a couple of things at the end of a sermon, but one or two attributes I want to mention. One is that this new God is neither all-powerful nor unchangeable. This God is constantly becoming. This God is the great flow of all, the Tao perhaps, the soup itself. And this God remembers, holds the history of everything. This God contains all of everything to the ends of time. We cannot be lost. We cannot be left behind. We cannot be forgotten. We are part of this flow. Our own lives are part of this whole. And according to some philosophers, we are drawn toward more conscious belonging, such that we want to lead good lives. We want to lead lives of goodness. We want to be seen as not only be seen, but we want to be generous and honorable. One UU colleague, Elizabeth Stevens, compared it to the smell of pancakes drawing her teenagers out of bed in the morning. They are lured forward. And that's why there was that list in my opening words about aspirations. I seem to be wired to want to live that way. I want to live a good and generous life, not that I don't forget and screw up and mess up and stray and disappoint myself and finally come back and reconnect. I end my services with the words, remember, we are never all alone. And back in Redwood City, those people who knew it was coming would all nod. Some told me that they came every week just for those words of assurance. Imagine that we are all in this mystery of living, all of us together, and that we can never be lost. Maybe that is the truth of everything. Perhaps our interconnection does hold us, holds eternity, holds the universe, holds us, and will not let us go. Blessed be.